gold continue to migrate from west to east, and China has been the big buyer. We're now in a situation where the Chinese are saying these dollars are toast. They must be thinking in similar lines to China in Russia now. I wouldn't say that it's the total end of the LBMA, but just imagine, if 1 ounce, if you like, is the equivalent of $1 million, which will be the situation in a currency collapse, then how important does London become? Once the means of pricing them collapses, then those markets will collapse as well. So China is building, if you like, the market of the future. So not only have we seen gold march from west to east, but now the market is marching from west to east as well. And it's not going to be a dollar-priced market. It is going to be a yuan-based market.
The ongoing migration of gold from Western vaults to Eastern markets signals a fundamental shift in the global financial architecture. As Western fiat currencies face growing systemic pressures, the concentration of physical bullion in Asian economic centers is reshaping the geopolitical landscape. Alasdair Macleod, a prominent financial analyst and economic commentator, argues that Eastern powers are aggressively preparing for an impending collapse of the US dollar. He emphasizes that China has quietly built an alternative physical settlement framework to insulate itself from a failing Western fiat system. Macleod predicts that a full-scale currency collapse will eventually see gold values explode to the equivalent of $1 million per ounce, which will completely collapse Western paper markets and establish a new yuan-based gold exchange standard. This massive accumulation of wealth allows the East to build the market of the future, while the dollar-priced system completely disintegrates. Now, we present the clips from Alasdair's interview. Before we continue to discuss this, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell icon. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
Gold continue to migrate from west to east, and China has been the big buyer. I think at the same time, estimates of what India actually has, the Indian population, have been wildly exaggerated. I mean, they're talking about, 20,000, 30,000 tons or something in the hands of the Indians. That's completely false. I won't go into the reasons for that, but there are very good reasons for making that statement. So I think that the Chinese government has probably accumulated a further, 25,000 tons, something like that. So they've got, they could have 50,000 tons as a state quite easily. Then, of course, you've got all the holdings by individuals and so on. So, we're looking at as much as 30 to 35% of global above-ground gold stocks actually being locked up in China. Now, the importance of this move from the PBOC saying you no longer need to seek our permission to export gold into Hong Kong, or I suppose anywhere else for that matter. It's just a customs matter. All these things are customs matters, but essentially it has freed it up. That, I think, basically means that you've got this huge, great mountain of gold, which is going to back the new market in gold in Hong Kong, the new system, which is unashamedly based, the settlement system. It's unashamedly based on the settlement system in the LBMA. But it's going to be not effectively a paper market. Yes, there is obviously if you've got a deferred settlement, then there is a paper market. But the point is it's going to be considerably more physical. And also being in Chinese yuan, it's something which I guess, they can really, the authorities will have greater control over. And this all sort of comes in towards, if you like, a gold exchange standard between the yuan and gold being established to replace a failing Western fiat currency system. I think it's absolutely clear, if you look at all the steps that have been taken, it's absolutely clear that this is where this is going. And but the thing that's interesting is that China obviously has a very, very good intelligence on what was going on in the Gulf. Ahead of that war, she reversed her policy towards the silver in particular, at the same time as rare earths had already been restricted. But the first we became aware of the change in the policy on silver was that suddenly there was a crisis on the LBMA with a spike in lease rates up to about 40%. I think that was on the 9th of October. This is it. She's behaving as if she regards the the Western currencies and the dollar in particular as being in a crack-up boom. And she's now got to protect her own position. I wouldn't say that it's the total end of the LBMA, but just imagine, if 1 ounce, if you like, is the equivalent of $1 million, which will be the situation in a currency collapse, then how important does London become? I mean, the volumes might sort of appear to be fantastic, but, if $1 million doesn't buy you a cup of tea, so what? This is the danger that China obviously sees. And this is why she's setting up an alternative, which is a physically based settlement system, but, and would be pricing it in yuan. And so the one thing she is yet to do is actually to fix the rate and say, right, this is the rate. I mean, in a sense, the speculation would then be taken out of it. And I think that the speculation would then, in gold anyway, would then work on arbitrage. If someone has a gold standard which promises you a higher rate than what you're getting, let's say in the yuan as a gold substitute, then what do? It's quite simple. You sell your yuan, buy your gold, ship it to Russia, where you get 14% or whatever currently, as out of rubles as a gold substitute, and say thank you very much. This is banking. That is banking. That is arbitrage. That makes sense. But I think that's about the only sort of business that will happen. And it's for this reason that once Russia does put the ruble on a gold standard, interest rates will fall quite rapidly, and it will, I think, lead to an enormous revival of economic activity on a non-inflationary basis, so long as they continue to tie that ruble to gold with a proper exchange standard. I mean, this is something which must be done for the good of not just for the world. Looking at this chasm of currency collapses, but as far as China and Russia are concerned, I mean, this is going to add so much strength to their economies. I mean, it's a must.
The shift toward a commodity-backed monetary system extends well beyond Beijing's strategic reserves. Russia is also perfectly positioned to transition to a hard money architecture due to its exceptionally clean balance sheet, minimal national debt to GDP ratio under 20%, and booming energy export revenues. A major macroeconomic shift will occur when Russia officially places the ruble on a formal gold standard, which will cause its domestic interest rates to plummet rapidly and spark an enormous, non-inflationary revival of economic activity. Furthermore, Moscow possesses an estimated 10,000 tons of gold hidden within its principal sovereign wealth funds, giving it the necessary leverage to completely upend the financial stability of European nations. This strategy will effectively neutralize Western military ambitions by entirely devastating the fiscal foundations of Britain, France, and Germany. Now, let's get back to the interview.
Russia is fascinating. Her finances are actually in very good order, thanks to her ability to export energy in particular. Government debt to GDP is less than 20%. Personal tax rates are around about 13%, something like that. This to libertarians is heaven. She can actually go on a gold standard tomorrow. And I think that, if I was in Putin's shoes, I would be very tempted not to aggressively attack the Europeans who are arming themselves for a future conflict against Russia, Britain, France, Germany in particular. But I think I could quite easily just destroy them by putting the ruble on a gold standard. And if you think what would happen then, at the moment, interest rates in Russia I think it's about 13% or something. Inflation is running, last I saw, something like 8% at the consumer price level. If they put the ruble onto a gold standard, what would happen is that the Russian banks would be in our markets buying gold, leasing it even for 1%, and because the ruble would be a gold substitute, effectively, shipping it into Russia with a return of something like 13%. What's not to like? This is the way, in fact, in which gold standards are maintained. If you've got a run on your gold, just raise the interest rates. You find the run will stop and it will reverse if you raise them enough. So this is actually, Russia is already in this position. And not only that, but of course nobody outside Russia really holds rubles. So it's not as if you're going to get, they're going to be immediately challenged by malevolent forces in the West, flogging rubles to undermine, to destroy the peg, because they haven't got the rubles to sell. I mean, it's a wonderful position. And if they did that, they would actually destroy the finances of Britain, France, and Germany completely. They wouldn't be able to prosecute war. They'd have to come begging for, perhaps we need a new diplomatic or rapprochement. I'd be very tempted to do that. I really would if I was in Putin's shoes. And not only that, but Sergei Glaziev wrote an article in a Moscow business magazine about, 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, saying, it'd be very easy to put the ruble onto a gold standard. And he was right. It was interesting that was published because I think it was a signal that this is something which was being thought of, let's put it that way, in the highest circles in Russia. They know they can put the ruble on a gold standard. And, we're now in a situation where the Chinese are saying these dollars are toast. They must be thinking in similar lines to China in Russia now. And the other thing is that Russia can easily disclose far larger levels of gold in her reserves than just the 2,300 tons or whatever that the central bank holds, because they've got sovereign wealth funds, and sort of intelligence suggests that they've got something like 10,000 tons between the two principal sovereign wealth funds. And of course, the level of gold mining has accelerated quite substantially in Russia, so much so that she probably now rivals China as a gold miner. So, yeah, she's got the gold to do it. And more gold, effectively, than America says she has. What are the Americans' response to this going to be? Help! They've got no answer to it. First, they need to prove that they haven't got rid of all their gold. Go and speak to the Bundesbank and say what their opinion is. They were the ones who tried to get 300 tons out of the New York Fed back in whenever. I think it was, 2012-13 or something. And they were told it would take 7 years. Come on. Americans haven't got anything. They've stolen everybody else's gold, I guess. It's all part of the gold suppression scheme, because I'm pretty sure that of the 10 to 14,000 tons which were leased by 2002 and identified as such, estimated actually is a better word, by Frank Veneroso, I reckon the bulk of that is missing from the US, and basically from the earmarked reserves held by the US as custodian for the property of other central banks in Europe, principally. And also, I guess that she's also drawn down on her own reserves. So what's she got? She's got a problem. She went nap on trying to replace gold with the dollar, and is now being caught for wanting. If she actually had any sense of history, she wouldn't have gone down this route. But, it was politics that decided it. When you bear in mind that in 1948 she had over 20,000 tons, which was something like 60% of the above-ground stocks in the world at that stage, and she frittered them away all the way down to 9,000-something tons in 1971 when she was forced to suspend the Bretton Woods Agreement. One wonders whether they had 9,100, whatever it was, tons then. So, basically they're being fraudulent on the rest of us, and they're being found out. China knows this. I'm sure that, their intelligence and Russia's intelligence knows a lot more about the true position of US gold reserves and what's held by the New York Fed on an earmarked basis than we can ever know.
The legal and custodian frameworks that once guaranteed Western financial dominance are rapidly eroding under a cloud of systemic fraud. Decades of aggressive gold suppression schemes and extensive central bank leasing programs have quietly drained the gold reserves supposedly held by the United States. In fact, a vast portion of the physical bullion held by the New York Fed as a custodian for European central banks is completely missing, leaving the West entirely defenseless against an Eastern monetary offensive. While Western authorities can no longer verify their actual physical holdings, Eastern intelligence networks are fully aware of this fraudulent vulnerability and are timing their structural maneuvers accordingly. The historic era of unbacked fiat manipulation is finally drawing to a close as real, tangible assets reclaim their rightful place at the center of the global economy. Share your thoughts about this interview in the comment section below. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell icon. Thanks for watching.